Before you hand over your credit card for that shiny new TV sitting in your cart right now, you need to see something. Something the manufacturers hoped you'd never notice until it was way too late to return it. Because in 2025, we're facing a quiet crisis in the television industry that almost nobody's talking about. TVs that are literally designed to fail faster than ever before. And the worst part is that the decline is happening from the moment you plug them in. This isn't about budget brands cutting corners or cheap knockoffs from unknown factories. We're talking about major names, trusted logos, TVs that cost over $1,000 but carry built-in expiration dates that would shock you if you saw the internal documents. The average lifespan of a television used to be around 10 to 15 years, if you took decent care of it. But industry data from repair technicians and consumer protection agencies is now showing a disturbing pattern where modern TVs are failing at rates we haven't seen in decades. And it's happening between the 2 to 4 year mark for way too many models. Walk into any electronics repair shop today and ask them what they're seeing on their benches. You'll hear the same stories over and over again. Backlight failures that used to be rare are now routine. Power supply boards that used to last the life of the TV are dying within months of the warranty expiring. Software that slows to a crawl or just stops receiving updates entirely, turning your smart TV into a dumb brick that can barely load Netflix without freezing. And the kicker is that many of these problems are not accidents or bad luck. They're the result of very specific design choices made to reduce manufacturing costs while keeping prices high enough that you think you're getting quality. The reality is that TV manufacturers are stuck in a profit squeeze right now, and they're passing that pressure directly onto the consumer in ways you can't see until it's too late. Panel prices dropped dramatically over the last few years because of oversupply in the market, which should have been good news for buyers. But instead of keeping quality high and lowering prices, many brands decided to keep prices where they were and quietly downgrade the internal components that determine how long your TV actually lasts. Cheaper capacitors in the power supply that can't handle heat stress. Lower grade LED strips that dim unevenly or burn out faster. Processors that were barely adequate on day one and become painfully slow after a few software updates. Thermal management systems that were designed to just barely pass certification tests, but fail under real-world use when your TV is running for hours every day. And here's the thing that makes this especially frustrating. The marketing materials and the spec sheets don't show any of this. You see the screen size, the resolution, the refresh rate, the HDR support, all the flashy features that look great on paper. But nowhere does it tell you that the power supply uses capacitors rated for only 3,000 hours of use, which sounds like a lot until you realize that's less than 2 years if you watch TV for just 4 hours a day. Nowhere does it mention that the backlight array uses the cheapest possible LED configuration that's known to develop dark spots and uneven brightness within 18 to 24 months. Nowhere does it warn you that the processor inside is already outdated and that software updates will gradually make the interface slower and slower until you're sitting there staring at loading screens just trying to switch inputs. Let's talk about what's actually happening inside these TVs because understanding the problems is the only way to avoid them. The first major issue is thermal management, or really the lack of it. Modern TVs are thinner than ever before, which looks sleek and modern on your wall, but it creates a serious engineering problem. Electronics generate heat, and heat is the number one killer of electronic components over time. In older, thicker TVs, there was enough space inside the chassis for proper ventilation and heat dissipation. Components could breathe, air could flow, and heat could escape before it caused damage. But in today's ultra-thin designs, everything is packed together so tightly that heat has nowhere to go. This is especially problematic in the power supply section and around the LED driver boards. These components get hot during normal operation, and when they're crammed into a space with poor airflow, that heat builds up and stays trapped. Over time, the elevated temperatures cause the solder joints to crack, the capacitors to bulge and leak, and the circuit boards themselves to warp slightly. You won't notice any of this happening because it's gradual and hidden inside the TV. But one day, maybe 18 months in, maybe 30 months in, you'll turn on your TV, and it just won't power on anymore. Or it'll power on, but the screen stays black. Or you'll see flickering in lines that weren't there before. And when you take it to a repair shop, they'll tell you the power supply failed or the LED driver board is dead, and the replacement part costs almost as much as a new TV, so you might as well just buy another one. That's not an accident, that's a business model. The second major issue is the quality of the LED backlighting systems. Most TVs today use LED backlighting to illuminate the LCD panel, and the quality of those LEDs varies wildly between models and manufacturers. High-end TVs use carefully binned LEDs that are tested for brightness, consistency, and longevity, and they're arranged in arrays with proper current regulation to ensure they age evenly. But budget and mid-tier TVs, even from big-name brands, often use whatever LEDs are cheapest at the time of manufacturing. These LEDs are not binned for quality, they're not tested for long-term performance, and they're often pushed harder than they should be to achieve the high brightness numbers that look impressive in stores. The result is that these LEDs start to degrade much faster than they should. Some will dim more quickly than others, creating uneven patches of brightness across the screen. Some will fail completely, leaving dark spots that are especially noticeable in bright scenes or when displaying white backgrounds. And because modern LED arrays are often difficult and expensive to replace, this kind of failure usually means the end of the TV's useful life. Repair technicians report that LED backlight failures are among the most common issues they see now, and they're happening on TVs that are barely out of warranty. Some manufacturers have even moved to edge-lit LED systems instead of full array systems because they're cheaper to produce. But edge lighting creates its own problems with uniformity, and it tends to fail even faster because the LEDs are pushed even harder to compensate for the poor light distribution. Then there's the software problem, which is more insidious because it happens gradually and many people don't even realize it's not normal. Smart TVs run on operating systems just like your phone or computer. And those operating systems need to be updated to fix bugs, add features, and maintain compatibility with streaming services. But here's the ugly truth that nobody wants to admit. TV manufacturers have very little incentive to keep supporting older models with software updates. They want you to buy a new TV every few years, not keep using the same one for a decade. So what happens is that after about 2 or 3 years, the software updates become less frequent, then they slow down significantly, and eventually they stop altogether. When that happens, you're left with a TV that still technically works, but becomes increasingly frustrating to use. Apps start to crash more often because they're being updated by the streaming services, but your TV's operating system can't keep up. The interface becomes slower because newer versions of the software are designed for newer, faster processors, and your old processor is struggling. New streaming services or new features within existing services won't work at all because your TV's software is too old to support them. And security vulnerabilities that get discovered after support ends will never be patched, which means your TV becomes a potential entry point for network attacks if you keep it connected to the internet. This is especially problematic with budget brands and white label TVs that never had strong software support to begin with, but even major brands are guilty of abandoning older models way too quickly. Now let's talk about specific brands and models where these problems are showing up at alarming rates based on actual failure data and repair statistics. And before anyone says this is just opinion or bias, understand that this information comes from aggregated repair records, consumer complaint databases, and independent testing facilities that have no financial stake in promoting or criticizing any particular brand. The numbers don't lie, and the patterns are clear once you know where to look. Starting with the lower end of the market, store brand TVs and white label models sold under names like Westinghouse, RCA, Element, Sceptre, and various regional brands continue to have some of the highest failure rates in the industry. These TVs are often manufactured by third-party factories using whatever components are cheapest at the moment, and quality control is minimal at best. Repair shops report failure rates approaching 40% within the first 3 years for some of these brands, with power supply failures and LED backlight issues being the most common problems. The parts used in these TVs are simply not designed for longevity, and when they fail, replacement parts are often impossible to find because the manufacturers move on to new models so quickly. Moving up to the budget tier for more recognizable brands, certain model lines from TCL, Hisense, and Insignia are showing concerning patterns as well. Now, to be clear, not all models from these brands are problematic. TCL's higher-end mini LED models and Hisense's ULED premium lines actually perform quite well in longevity tests. But their entry-level and mid-range models, the ones that make up the bulk of their sales, are using cost-reduced components that are failing at higher than expected rates. Power supply issues are common, particularly in larger screen sizes where the power demands are higher. LED edge lighting failures are showing up frequently in models from 2023 and 2024, and the smart TV interfaces on these lower-tier models are already struggling with performance issues even though they're relatively new. The concerning thing here is that these brands have built good reputations in recent years by offering excellent value at the premium end of their lineups, but that reputation is leading consumers to trust their cheaper models as well, and that's where people are getting burned. If you're buying TCL or Hisense, you really need to stick to their flagship series. The 6 series and above for TCL, the U8 and above for Hisense. Below those tiers, the cost-cutting becomes too aggressive and the reliability suffers noticeably. Then we get to the mid-tier models from the major brands. And this is where things get really frustrating because these are TVs that cost $800 to $1,500, and consumers reasonably expect them to last. But Samsung's lower-tier QLED models, specifically the Q60 and Q70 series, have been showing higher than normal failure rates in power supply components and issues with the quantum dot film degrading faster than it should. These aren't cheap TVs by any measure, but they're not built to the same standards as Samsung's higher-end models. The difference shows up in the failure data. LG's mid-range LED models not their OLEDs, but their nanocell and standard LED TVs, have similar issues with inconsistent quality and premature failures in certain batches. Sony's lower tier models, anything below the X90 line, are using much cheaper components than their premium offerings, and it shows in the repair statistics. And here's something that makes this worse. Because these are known brands with good overall reputations, people assume they're getting quality no matter which model they choose. But the reality is that these companies are operating with huge quality gaps between their premium and budget offerings, and they're not being transparent about where those gaps exist. You see the logo, you trust the brand, and you end up with a TV that's going to need replacing in 3 years instead of 10. Here's where it gets really worrying. When these TVs reach 2 to 4 years old, repair reports start showing the same problems happening again and again across different brands. It's almost like the parts are made to stop working at the same time. It doesn't matter if it's a high-end OLED, a mid-range QLED, or a budget TV. The same things break, backlights fail, OLED panels dim, power boards stop working, and Wi-Fi modules die. And the crazy part? Most of these problems aren't because people use the TVs roughly. They happen because the parts are working harder than they were made to. Panels get hotter, power supplies run at full capacity, and cheaper, thinner materials are used to save money. Today's TVs are thinner and lighter, but that comes at a cost. They don't last as long. If you look at old TVs from 2010, like plasmas or CCFL backlit LCDs, they had big heat sinks, strong circuit boards, and durable parts. Modern TVs? They're fragile, held together with tiny screws, thin metal, and plastic frames. Repair experts say it clearly. New TVs aren't made to last. They're made to last just past the warranty. And here's the suspicious part. If these companies really wanted long-lasting TVs, they would use better power boards, stronger capacitors, and designs that prevent screen burn or dimming. But they don't. Why? Because a TV that lasts 10 years means fewer repeat customers. They want you to buy a new model every few years. Another hidden trick: automatic brightness changes, forced dimming, and apps running in the background. Some brands claim these save the screen, but in reality, they wear out the parts faster. Power boards get stressed, CPUs heat up, and the TV ages even when it's just sitting there. If you think, I'll just fix it when it breaks, think again. Spare parts are getting harder to find. Most brands stop making replacements after 18 months. By year 3, parts are expensive or impossible to get. Replacing a panel can cost more than buying a new TV, and that's not a mistake, that's business. Repair experts keep saying the same thing. These failures aren't accidents. They're planned, companies know which parts fail and when. Instead of fixing the problem, they release a slightly updated model and call it the latest and greatest. Meanwhile, you're trapped in a cycle of buying a new TV every 3 to 5 years. And the more smart features a TV has, the faster it wears out. Software updates, apps, background processes, and constant data tracking all put stress on tiny components. Smart TVs are convenient, but terrible for long-term use. TVs used to be simple. Now they're tiny computers packed into thin cases, and those cases aren't built to last. And this is the part most buyers never realize until it's too late. Your TV isn't just a screen anymore. It's a data machine. And that data machine is constantly running processes that silently wear out the hardware faster than anything you'll ever see on the spec sheet. Every time your TV pings a server, every time it logs performance data, every time it sends usage statistics back to the manufacturer, that CPU is heating up, that memory module is working, and that power board is pushing current through stressed components. Think about it. You turn the TV off, but it's not actually off. It's still connected to Wi-Fi, updating apps, downloading firmware, tracking how long you watched, which picture mode you prefer, which apps you open. That standby mode is eating into the lifespan without you even touching the remote. Older TVs had true off switches. Modern TVs have sleep modes that are basically mini computers running 24/7. And here's where the real manipulation begins. Companies are now using software updates to quietly change how your TV performs over time. Some updates throttle brightness. Some updates shift peak luminance. Some updates reduce HDR performance to protect the panel. But guess what? Lower brightness doesn't stop panel wear. It just makes your TV feel older, dimmer, and less exciting, so you're more likely to replace it. There's a reason consumers report their TV looking washed out or weaker after a big update. Not broken, just tired enough to push you into buying a new model. Planned obsolescence isn't a conspiracy anymore. It's a marketing strategy written in code. Another hidden problem is the cheap internal storage. Most modern TVs only have 4 GB or 8 GB of slow flash memory. That's fine on day one, but after years of app updates, firmware logs, and system data, that memory gets clogged. Once the storage gets close to full, the entire system slows down, freezes, crashes, or fails to boot. And guess what support will tell you? Buy a new model. Yours is outdated. The hardware wasn't old. It was just suffocated. Now add the biggest killer of all, heat. Ultra-thin TVs have almost no space for ventilation. The panels run hot, the processors run hot, the backlights run hot. And when heat cycles repeat thousands of times, Solder joints crack, capacitors dry out, power boards get stressed, and panels lose brightness. The TV doesn't explode. It just slowly loses the ability to perform until one day it refuses to turn on. And when that day comes, the repair estimate magically ends up being 60-80% of the cost of a brand new TV. The same percentage where manufacturers declare a total loss and push you to upgrade. But let's talk about the thing no one wants to admit. These failures aren't accidental side effects of new technology. They're the predictable result of cost-cutting thinner boards, cheaper components, and forced feature updates. TVs are now designed around the upgrade cycle, not the ownership cycle. The biggest brands know exactly what they're doing. They know the average buyer wants the thinnest design, the brightest picture, the newest buzzwords, the trendiest packaging. And they know that if the TV lasts too long, their next model year becomes harder to sell. So they rely on a system where panels dim faster, backlights wear out sooner, power boards are stressed from day one, software bloats over time, storage fills with junk, heat damages components silently, replacement parts aren't stocked, repairs cost more than replacements, and all you see is a TV that used to look incredible, slowly aging into something dull and faulty. This is why repair technicians keep warning people, don't fall for the marketing. Don't assume newer means better. Don't assume every failure is your fault. These TVs are engineered to deliver amazing performance up front while quietly eating away at their own lifespan at the same time. Because that's the real business model now. Sell the experience first. Sell the replacement later. Repeat the cycle forever. So what does all of this mean for you? Someone who just wants a TV that lasts? It means the whole TV industry has changed. Instead of making strong, long-lasting TVs, companies now make TVs that look great at first but don't stay good for long. Today's TVs are almost like a subscription. They impress you in the beginning, then slowly get worse until you end up buying a new one. And here's the biggest proof that companies know these TVs won't last. The warranty hasn't gotten any longer. In fact, many brands quietly reduced coverage on the most important parts, like the panel, power board, and backlight. If TVs were really improving, warranties would increase. But instead, companies try to sell you extended warranties. Why? Because they know these TVs won't last like older models. They know the brightness drop, the dimming, the boot problems, the Wi-Fi issues, the burn-in, and blown LEDs are coming. The sad part is that most buyers have no idea. People see a bright, colorful TV in a store playing a perfect demo video and think it will stay like that for years. But that amazing picture is only meant to last for the first 6 to 12 months, the honeymoon phase. After that, the slow decline begins. Companies don't need your TV to last for many years. They only need it to last long enough for you to forget what you paid, so you feel upgrading is easier than repairing. But you don't have to fall for this. You can avoid the trap by knowing what to look for. Avoid ultra-thin TVs. Thinner TVs usually run hotter and die faster. Don't depend on the TV's built-in smart software. Use an external streaming device so the TV's processor does less work. Turn off features like voice detection, quick start, and background updates. These small steps reduce heat and extend the TV's life. And don't trust a brand just because it's famous. Some big brands fail the quickest. Some cheaper brands last longer because their hardware is simpler and stays cooler. Launch reviews don't tell you durability. Repair technicians and long-term users do. In this modern world of disposable electronics, how long your TV lasts has less to do with the brand name and more to do with what's inside. Sadly, the internal parts are where most companies save money. That's why so many TVs from different brands fail the same way. That's why repair shops are full of 3-year-old TVs that look fine on the outside, but are dead inside. And that's why people keep spending money on new TVs without realizing they're stuck in a loop. Manufacturers know this loop works. They know that once your TV breaks, you won't try to repair it. You'll just buy the newest model. And that's exactly what they want. Upgrades caused by failure, not by your choice. But once you understand the pattern, the tricks stop working. You stop acting like the customer they expect. You start choosing TVs with better parts, better cooling, and better lifespan. You start using the TV in a way that reduces damage. You start noticing when a software update is actually hurting your TV instead of improving it. Because the truth is simple, modern TVs can last, but the way they're built and updated pushes them toward early failure. And unless people demand better quality and make smarter choices, the cycle will continue every year. Manufacturers won't change, not until customers understand what's happening. And now, you do.